Also, Sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss is a tone poem piece based on Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This was written by Friedrich Nietzsche. In Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, we follow Zarathustra awakening from his cave after 10 years of studying philosophy, where he has come up with a meaning. He wishes to bring mankind this new idea, which is the idea of being the overman, of becoming this human being that's enlightened and becomes basically the superior, one with nature and everything. And he starts walking and he approaches people, this religious person, and tells him famously that God is dead. And then we continue on his journey, where he eventually tries to get to the people and he gains a following, and then he tries to experience science, which science ends up not being the solution either and just overcomplicates things and brings him into a insane state and starts leaning towards nihilism, much like Europe was during the time. And so then he eventually breaks down and decides to just dance joyously, and he eventually becomes one with nature after giving up all of your earthly possessions and everything, and he just kind of transcends, and bam, Zarathustra. But what we're analyzing is the piece written by Richard Strauss. So first, this piece is a tone poem, and to explain what a tone poem is quickly, it's basically a musical piece that depicts a poem, short story, in typically one section. That is the very basic definition, and that is what Richard Strauss did here. This opening movement clearly indicates awakening or creation, and it is titled Einleitung, or introduction. So we have the creation of the world almost. And Stanley Kubrick uses this movement right here. I'm sure you have seen 2001 Space Odyssey, that the score was originally also supposed to be scored by Alex North, but that's a whole nother story, something I'm upset about. But anyway, the actual piece of music is talking about Zarathustra awakening. And it's sort of like Zarathustra seeing this creation and everything happening and then deciding, you know what, I'm going to go tell mankind the great news of what I discovered. What is truly the most important, which is the overman. What we have here is the nature motif, which we have in C. And this is to represent the beauty of nature and something that Strauss really connects with. Anytime we hear nature, we'll hear it in C usually, and it will sound beautiful and lush. And this is what Zarathustra is really trying to connect with and what he most relates to in Strauss's interpretation of Sprach Zarathustra. Movement 2, von den Hinterwelten on the on the hereafter goers. Here the bass is heard, and we get to hear Credo in un Deum, or I believe in one God, which is represented in this piece. And so what that right there is it's sort of like Zarathustra approaching this religious gathering. Zarathustra is now seeing these religious people, and we see how happy they are that they have found their way in God and religion. And something that I think is a misconception often is that it's often assumed that Nietzsche and Zarathustra and Strauss are often completely, atheist. Screw God, we don't like him, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It's just almost a telling of different ideas. And as we can see here, the people that are worshiping God and this beautiful melody there's a reason it's so beautiful, and everything is quite tonal and in happiness. It comes as he descends down, which is why we have that descending feature coming at the beginning. But then we get that beautiful, beautiful religious harmony, which lasts a bit. We then get to von der großen Schnuckster, of the great longing. The great longing is this idea of what is the meaning of life. This is what we truly seek to find, and religious people seek to find. And that's where Strauss is like, haha, religion, or haha, Nietzsche's criticisms. The criticisms come in, and these people are attacked for, look how foolish you are for believing all of this. But that's when we actually get our inner turmoil fight with Zarathustra and the religious people. We get this fight, and all of a sudden we start hearing these ambiguous questions, these questions approaching. And can religion answer this question? And then Zarathustra, the main character, not Nietzsche, or to be confused with Strauss, is saying no. Is one of my favorite movements just because of how chaotic and how we truly reach this turmoil of the fullest. It's no longer Zarathustra versus religion. It's now Zarathustra versus self. And that's always cool, because Zarathustra then has to accept that the joys and pleasures that he once had as a young lad can no longer be. He has to overcome them, become one with nature, and become the overman. And he cannot do that if he reminisces on the past, or if he reminisces these joys and he wants to be human. He needs to become the overman. And that's basically right here at this point is Zarathustra battling with that conscious, battling with the part of him that's telling him, why don't you just be happy like these religious people or these other people? Why do you have to have the meaning to life or become the overman? And Zarathustra is like, I must become the overman. And that's where we get another movement. Well, section. It's not movement. But after that, we get the grave. This section right here is called Das Grabbild, the Song of the Grave. Not to be confused with the one we just heard, Von der Freuden und Leidenschaft, of Joys and Passion. And at the grave is when Zarathustra has finally buried everything else, back to the previous life, back to everything that he's been following. It is no longer required because of Zarathustra's new philosophy. And we get a really ghostly sound with the strings going high up and just creating these woo, woo. But I thought that was cool. And that's what got me thinking about how Strauss would represent death, or like a more figurative death, by making it sort of comedic but also serious, and like this acceptance of this old philosophy being destroyed and new philosophy time. Woohoo! Section is another great one. Strauss is so smart for this. This is called Von der Wissenschaft. And of course, just for that translation, it's of science and learning. And for those of you that want to know some other music theory, what's something a music theory snob considers the highest and the most intellectual of design? The fugue. And what is this piece or this section? A fugue. Wow. And in correspondence to the book by Nietzsche with Zarathustra, what we see happening is Zarathustra decides that maybe the answer to the meaning of life is actually in science, and that's what he must pursue. But something that we kind of hear in this Zarathustra fugue is, sure, it's all complex, perfect, blah, 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 but there's also this sense of ugliness and something that we don't enjoy. It's almost creating us into a dread of almost that studying more science just leads to becoming more insane, learning more about stuff makes you want to learn more, and then et cetera, and you kind of fall into a deep depression. And that's what's happening to Zarathustra at this moment. He searches for science and learning, but and we hear the three-note matron motif afterwards, because this is when his science is finally interrupted by Der Genocide. I totally butchered that, but it's also pronounced for convalescent. And science is interrupted by a dance, a nature dance. And science wants to take back, but no. It's time for nature. And that's where Zarathustra's main philosophy view is coming. And something else clever that Strauss does here is, as you know, there's a second Strauss that wrote the Blue Debut and all that. And what is that? A waltz. And what do we hear? We hear a dance that's also a waltz. Sorry, this is like really cool. And so this is Zarathustra basically battling science and nature. Which one do I choose? How do I find this meaning of life? Finally get one of the most beautiful, powerful moments where the chime starts hitting 12 to indicate it is midnight, because what is this section called? That's right. Nacht van die Nacht van die Leid. Der Leid. Nacht van die Leid. Song of the Night Wanderer. Midnight is tolling. Everyone is basically... Midnight has come, and Zarathustra has discovered how to become the overman, how to become one with nature, and how to give up all the other possessions that he was with. We now start to hear the orchestra decaying away, because no longer are these things of humankind needed. And we hear the nature motif still, but on top of that we hear the world riddle, which I forgot to mention, which is ends up being neither in major or minor key in the end. In fact, in the ending, we don't get either, because the riddle can never be solved. We can never know the meaning of life. This is something that is not discovered. But something that has to be accepted is that there is no answer, which is sort of leaves you in a weird taste in your mouth. And that's the idea of the actual book, Zarathustra. And that's what's so brilliant about Strauss here. Strauss was able to take a tone poem here, and he used motifs, he used instrumentation, he used waltzes, fugues, and just so many bright colors and registers to represent a philosophy book that has a narrative. And that's just genius. And obviously there's a lot more to dive into this. I forgot to mention a lot of things, I believe. But just knowing how brilliant this piece is, and Strauss himself, it gives us composers something to strive for.